Kaleidoscope quilt, stack and whack project, one block wonder? Well, no wonder you're all so confused. There's a million different names for the same kind of quilt project, and I'm going to teach you all how to do it and even make it a little more simple for you. Let's get started. That is right, folks. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Making It Fun right here on YouTube. I'm Rob Appell from Michael Miller Fabrics, your obviously caffeinated host, and I'm super excited to see all of you on the other side of the camera. And this video project is really fun for me to do because it actually started not only from our awesome free pattern, and yes, there's a link in the description below that you can get this right from the Michael Miller website, but it also came from a personal email question that I was sent a few months ago on how to handle this pattern and how to do these things. So I want to back up a moment, and yes, if you look at this beautiful quilt on the wall, today we're going to work on simplifying the method of making what we all know as stack and whack, one block wonder, kaleidoscope quilt, repeat quilt. There's a lot of different names for this, but I promised I would simplify, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So there is a free pattern to follow this, and I will give the instructions today based on that free pattern, but I want you to be thinking bigger quilt world. This is a technique video. Okay, so let's go right to the quilt right here real fast, and you can see that this is actually simply a hexagon. Okay, so this whole quilt is just made from hexagons. Therefore, you could make a quilt like this from any size hexagons. Okay, so we're going to work using a 60-degree triangle. I love the ones from Creative Grids, of course, and you can even see there's a lot of lines on here, so we could do this a lot of different ways. So first thought is just think hexagon projects. So if you like hexagon quilts, this is awesome. If you don't like picking fabric, this is even better because this project uses only one piece of fabric, but that's the second part, and this is where folks get very confused because we're talking about repeat. So let's start there in today's video. Let's discuss how we're going to use this beautiful poinsettia fabric from Michael Miller. Now, this is a fabric that you have seen before because this is one of our heritage prints, I'm going to call it, or one of, I should say, our hot sellers. This thing's incredible, and it is July, and we're getting ready for Christmas in July, and that is why I'm showing this here today. This is one of our long-standing, beautiful, beautiful prints. People absolutely love it. You can find it in a lot of your local quilt shops out there. So feel free to join in the Christmas fun. And if it does feel a little hot out there to all of you, yes, it's hot here today as well. We're having a bit of a heat wave. So I will be sweating bullets by the end of this video. I just promise, especially with all the extra lights and all the stuff, the live studio audience. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so back to the fabric, kids. What you're seeing here on the table, actually at the moment, is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 repeats. We need 6 repeats, so you will see me cut this in just a second. We need 6 because each wedge of your hexagon is the exact same cut of fabric. And that's what makes this so amazing. So what you're seeing in this amazing quilt right here is a beautiful scattering of hexagons that were all created from this single repeat of fabric. And then the fun you get to really have is on your design wall, where you get to control your color. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the strategies to that towards the end of the video. But let's really get into this fabric here. And what I hope you can see is I have right now, like I said, 5 pieces that are cut exactly the same. Super perfect, super easy to do if you understand repeat in fabric. I'm going to take a moment and slide this out of the way. I've got a little sample over here that might make it easier to recognize. This is what fabric looks like to so many of us, right? On the bolt at the quilt shop, just the way we love to purchase it. Now, let's talk Fabric 101. Hopefully you can see this, and I'm going to show you a trick here in just a second. But anywhere in the fabric, if you were to find a portion of the design, a portion of the image, maybe put your finger right on it, if you were to run that information or run that all the way across, then you're going to generally find the design repeating, right? So from the mark to the mark is the repeat a lot of these large scale fabrics are roughly 24 inches. It's just the way that the equipment works that we print our fabric on. But I learned a trick and I think it's super, super easy to use. And so Donna Jordan and her husband, I actually picked up on one of her videos from this, but they were actually using the color code on the selvage because this is also printed and it's printed with the repeat. So sometimes it's hard to keep track. You're looking at all of the same design within the fabric. So when I was cutting these, I literally, and like I said, I need to cut one more. So let's just do it together right now. I'm going to grab my ruler, I'm going to grab a rotary cutter. You want to make sure your cutters are always sharp. That really does help considerably. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find this mark, and I just happen to be cutting all of them. Let me just show you. You can see here I've been cutting all of them right at the tippy edge of the number 15. Now you won't always have all of those different numbers on your selvages, but what I'm trying to say is you'll have something on your selvage that is easy to find the repeat in it. Maybe it's the manufacturer's name, maybe it's the color number 1. Not all fabrics have 15 colors in them is what I was trying to say. So first thing I'm doing is I'm finding with my eyeball right down there. Then I'm going to come back here and I'm going to line up my ruler with a nice line running right on the fold of my fabric. Now while that's set, now I can scooch this over just literally like a ½ millimeter because I needed it to touch at the edge of that number 15. I've got good pressure across my ruler. I'm going to go ahead and cut all the way through there. Okay, and even though this came off actually an entirely different bolt of fabric, my repeat, if I were to fold that over, should be exactly the same. I folded it upside down. But like I said, it's getting hot here and we better get this video moving. So your first step is, oh, and let me back up a little bit. I'm so sorry. I forgot to try to give a little more credit where credit is due. And that's always important because these designers that create these things the first time out really have come up with something amazing. And right now I want to apologize because I do not know who the original inventor creator of this style method is. When I started in quilting about 20 years ago, shortly after, there was a gal named Bethany Renyolds who wrote a couple of the books. So she wrote Stack and Whack and Stack and Whack 2. And to my knowledge, that was the first publications that talked about and gave method behind this quilt. So I'm going to give Bethany Reynolds credit, but I don't know that that's actually true because it is a kaleidoscope quilt. And a kaleidoscope can be formed by using repetitive pieces. We're using 60-degree triangles. And the reason I stopped when I did is because you can do this kind of a project using different counts. But because we're using 60-degree triangles, we do need 6 repeats so that we can make a hexagon. I hope that there makes sense. If any of you know who the original designer was, and you know it for sure, please drop that in the comments below because we all deserve that information. I apologize, I do not know. There's some conflicting info out there. So anyways, the first person that inspired me a million years ago was Bethany Reynolds, and I know there's been a bunch of great designers that have come along and simplified or redone this method and have made a lot of wonderful classes and workshops, and that's what we all love here in the quilting world. Okay, let's get that iron going. I'm going to need that in a moment. Now the next thing that we have all of these cut down, I want to go ahead and start to stack them. So I'm going to flip it so you can see that selvage again right there. Let's get this thread out of the way. And as you stack them, you want to make sure you do everything exactly the same. So I'm going to make sure that I always see the numbered portions of the selvages. And now I'm going to lay this edge really nice and tidy. And I do want you to do this with all your layers, okay? So it might be a bit of a challenge because you'll be technically cutting through 12 layers of fabric. You may want to have a little bit larger rotary cutter handy, or definitely a sharp blade. Taking the time as I lie each piece on top of the others to make sure that they fold, the selvages, and my first edge are lining up perfectly. And I should also point out, we will be cutting 4-inch strips here in a second. Remember when I said this was about a 24-inch repeat? Well, just if you don't like extra parts laying about, you'll want to build that into your philosophy on this style of quilt. You'll want to make sure that your fabric is evenly divided. So these were 24-inch repeats. So by cutting 4-inch strips, I should be able to get 6 of those perfectly, because 6 times 4 is 24. Okay, but I am very right-handed. Now that I've done that, I do need to flip this around. I'm going to just make sure that everything is lined back up. And the first thing we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and come to our ruler, and I'm going to make sure we're cutting really nice 4-inch cuts. But I am going to take a moment and pull out a much larger rotary cutter. If you don't know this, the bigger the wheel, the bigger the cut, the easier the cut. So I'm not going to be dragging my fabric. You may want to place pins through here to keep everything really secure, but I'm going to go ahead, put a lot of pressure down near the end of that ruler, and just go ahead with nice pressure on my right hand too, cut through. Did we get it? And we did. Perfect. You notice I just moved a little bit because I'm going to go ahead and make another 4-inch cut. And another 4-inch cut. And of course, you'll do that to the rest of your fabric, but I just want to show you the next step in getting all of your parts and pieces ready. So I'm going to carefully just lay that aside for later. And now let's go ahead and take one of our stacks and get ready to start making our 4-inch cuts, or excuse me, our triangles. Now, depending on how accurate and or strong possibly you are in your upper body, when we start to cut the triangles, things could be even a little bit more dicey. So you may also want to take the time now to take these pieces and open them up completely. So you're going down to 6 layers. See how nice we've got each one of these cut the same? You can just see that repeat over and over again. So I'm going to take a moment because now it's easier on my eyes, it's easier on my fabric, it'll be much easier on my cutting to just stack these, whack these. See what I'm saying? Okay, I've unfolded. And I'm just going to cut a few as we go, just so I can show you how this all comes together. And then we can start talking about design in the project, because you will need to make all of your cuts before you go to your design wall. So we're just going to kind of shorten up some of this info here for us. Okay, first thing we should probably do is let's come in here and just straighten off this edge right away. I'm going to come up about 1 inch from my selvage. I don't like to use the selvage in my quilting at all, or those little pinholes that we use to pull the fabric along the wheels. So we're going to take those off now, set those aside for the trash. Now we're going to come in here, and our first cut we want to make, actually, we can use right off of our straight edge. I'm going to come down here to the tip always of my triangle. This is a little challenging for me because I'm not very good at cutting left-handed, so I'm just going to go ahead right-handed, and I'm going to move my body, and I'm going to cut just like this. So this first little wedge, those little half wedges will be what we end up filling in on this outside edge of the project, okay? So you're going to want to set these aside, and this is step 3 or trick number 3. So the first one was find the repeat by using the actual selvage markings instead of the fabric. The second trick was make sure you have multiples and divisibles so that they work. So 4-inch strips from 24-inch repeats, right? The third thing, and this is the most crucial, is keep all of your pieces and parts together, because you will be using the exact same unit, all 6 around, to form the hex. So here we go. I just cut a triangle this way. Now the trick is, if you've never cut triangles with one of these wonderful rulers, you're going to flip it on over. I'm checking the tip. I'm checking my 4-inch line right here. I'm still wishing I was left-handed at the moment. And I'm going to go ahead and cut through here like this. And again, keeping all of those units together. Rotate your ruler. And do check to make sure that your strips aren't starting to get cattywampus. This will be the last, oh, don't you love that word cattywampus, by the way? This will be the last cut I can make before I need to reorganize my parts and pieces. A little easier this way, cutting through, right? And now, just to speed up the process for all of you at home, because I'm sure you're probably already designing your quilts and just listening to me in the background at this point. Let's use this beautiful one that has those center parts from our poinsettia and show you the way that this would come back together. So as you start to unpack your pieces, you're going to put them in the same orientation. Meaning that I've got all of my centers of the poinsettias going into the middle. You don't want to accidentally rotate, right? Because that's going to throw out your kaleidoscope or your repetitive block. So you want to make sure you're always focused on bringing back your kaleidoscopes together like this. This will form a kaleidoscope. It will end up somewhere in this project, but I'm not sure where I want to put it. So the easiest way to handle these kinds of units right now would truly be to sew these three together, then to sew these three together, but we're not going to sew them together in the center because we aren't sure where they're going to fall into in the lineup. So let's do that together real quick, and then we'll talk about color management. Sewing triangles together can be super easy. You don't have to stress out. If you've heard that word bias, it's not really all that terrible, but you do want to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. So again, I have my design. I'm just going to separate these three, and we're just going to do two at a time. I'm going to fold it over, focusing on this edge for my seam allowance. I'm just going to line up those tippy tips right there, and I'm going to come on into my sewing machine with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, I like to start by sewing off of the triangle. Some of you will use like a little bunny tail or something, but with my single hole stitch plate and my edge guide, this seems to be pretty darn accurate this way. Real nice. I'm just going to go ahead and stitch through, cut those threads, and this is one of those projects you're also going to want to press between sewings. So I'm going to reach on over, and we're just going to press to one side right now. Okay, so after I've pressed those, now I'm going to come back over to my design wall, table, board, wherever you're at, and you just want to make sure that you have kept the integrity of the design. Now, once you stitch these two triangles together, they're going to be a little bit smaller because of the union. So you're just going to go ahead and flop this over, line it up. And one of the things I like to do is line up my bottom edge of the triangle. That's going to help keep things nice and accurate. But you'll see some of the tips look like they're just kind of hanging over a bit. And then when I get to the machine, I want to use the bulk of the material on the bed of the machine. So I've got the new triangle up, I've got the old triangles down, or the previously pieced triangles down. So all the way through that corner there. And then just go ahead, like I said, after each union, you're going to want to go ahead and press. Now you can see I've got half of the hexie together. Let's do the same real quick for this one. So as you finish up that second half, and as tempting as it is to sew that center seam together, please don't. As a reminder, you're not sure how your hexies are going to shift throughout the project, right? So what I want you to do is maybe just fold these over for now. You definitely want to keep them together. So a straight pin's going to come in real handy. You might even want to see if you can pin in the middle about that 1/4 inch mark. So when you get to the design wall, you can flop them over like that. I don't know if that's a good idea or not because I got a quilt on the wall right now. But I do know I've got to keep all of the matching units together to make it really, really work, right? So saying design wall, let's get onto this design wall and talk a bunch more about the way that these are all going to come together. So now that you can see more of the whole quilt, I want you to notice as I step out of the way, there's actually kind of bands of color, bands of bright and dark spots that we've put together using the different kaleidoscopes that were created from that poinsettia fabric. One of the things I really love are some of these bright green hexagons that are formed. And this one here, there's kind of a matching one way over in the corner that you probably can't see, but that helps triangulate our eye. So it's a bright green and then a bright green, and then down here into the forest of the greens, right? You can see the same thing happening in the pinks. Bright pink, bright pink, bright pink, and it's triangulating your eye around the project. So the center-ish, the light source, is going to be where you're going to put your brightest blocks, your most interesting blocks, the ones you love, the ones you can't wait to sew into the project, right? Of course, these dark ones that you find over on the edges in the corner, down here in the bottom, way down here like this, those blocks are super important because it's the darkness of them that bring the energy and the light into these brighter blocks. So you're going to position those around a lot of the outside edges so that you're kind of pushing your color to keep that interest of your eye. I'm going to ask you to try to avoid putting stripes through your project of color. Make sure your color is kind of moving about. Give yourself a little time on the design wall to really enjoy playing with your kaleidoscope projects. And I really hope you've enjoyed this little explanation style video on the quilts we've been learning and loving for years, whether it be a stack and whack, a kaleidoscope, a one-hit wonder, a one-block wonder, whatever we love to call them. These hexagon kaleidoscope quilts are super easy, and I want to thank all of the folks, even if I don't know who you are, who came before us and created these awesome style projects. So, as I'm wrapping up this video, probably the easiest thing to say, because it's getting so dang hot in this room right now, is Happy 4th of July, everybody, and Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays coming up now in the future. Enjoy Christmas in July. Oh, and by the way, check out what our brand ambassadors have been doing for their holiday projects this summer as well, and we'll see you next time at Making It Fun. Wow, you are still there. Thanks for sticking with me till the end of the video. I know, I get a little long-winded sometimes. But if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you check out a few of the other ones we've created. I think they're terrific. And of course, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the little bell to be notified. I don't want you to miss a moment of the fun. Stay safe and happy sewing.